Hello, my name is Kai Gidwani. I am in the level design section 1, and my topic is leading lines and compositional flow. So, what we're going to be talking about today, we're going to start off with an introduction into what leading lines are and like a overview of this presentation. Then we'll move into the description of like directional lines in traditional art and traditional design, as in like physical art on paintings and like other types of design, such as like websites or like menus and other things that you read. Um, and then we'll go into leading lines in game design and how the same principles from directional lines and other parts of design can be applied into games. And then we'll move on to using the rest of the compositional flow toolkit and those principles to better enforce and help your games um, using the same principles that you use in other art. And then we move on to a conclusion. So, introduction. What leading lines are? They're part of a toolkit that you use for compositional design. Um, they can be real, as in like a real line that is drawn, or an implied line that comes out of the shape of other things around it. Um, and they're often used, the like primary use of them is to draw viewer attention from one point to another, often to focus an area that a player should be interested in, and draw attention away from a player that away from an area that a player should not be interested in. And these leading lines have a historical basis in design as a whole from other topics, obviously, as I mentioned before, such as paintings and other design. And then I'll be going into the compositional design toolkit that you can use to better your levels. All right, so directional lines in design. So directional lines are also called implied lines in like traditional art fields and like that whole space. They're very similar to leading lines, but for art and design. Um, so they obviously direct viewer through an art piece um, and really like lead the viewer's eye. They are implied lines in the sense that like this guy's arm here and this guy's arm here form lines like this and like this, which really lead you through the piece. When you first look at it, you're probably following a similar path of this, which is where there's like this line of action is between this. You can also draw an implied line here. That's a bit more complicated because it's people facing different directions. Um, and as you can see from this like triangle or even rectangular shape, um, these often form shapes in pieces. And I have another example here where you start here, you go this way because of this line here, and then using both the border of the painting and the horizon here to make another line that goes across here. And then using this contrast and this line here to go back down here and get like a whole view of this painting that just very lazily leads you along, very seamlessly, very nicely. And now we're moving on to how leading lines are used in game design. Um, so it's basically the game design version of directional lines, which was the last slide. And they subtly direct players through a space without blatantly telling them. You can blatantly tell players where to go with like a big red arrow, like on a wall or something, but these often allow for a much more like seamless experience where players don't realize they're being directed, but obviously still are. And all of these details here, like the ceiling one and all of these pipes are a very common one. But all of these create lines that direct your player towards down this hall instead of maybe something off to the side. Like any of these chambers here are often like maybe you would think that this is an item you can loot, but it's more just so set dressing. And these lines help to really define, like, okay, you're going this way. This is the way you want to go. And as you can kind of see in this picture and the other ones I'm going to show you, they're used in conjunction with other techniques. So, such as this lighting here, as like, this is the brightest thing in all of this space, and then this is dark again here to show contrast. And then down here as well, here is a more direct version of a line. Like this is the point you're trying to go to, and the point you want to be able to return to. It's kind of like your hub. And there's a lot of these bridges, and they just lead you right to there. The big line that just leads you to the map. Yeah, so that's leading lines in game design. Lots of other examples, but these are some pretty good ones. And now, compositional flow principles. So, leading lines work together with everything. They aren't your only technique that you want to use. Like I mentioned, you want to have other techniques like your lighting, your contrast. There's many more of these, such as landmarks, breadcrumbs, and contrast. So this image is a really, really good example where you start here, immediately you see your lines and you see your landmark. So this is where you want to go to in the end. It's something that you're shown as like a, hey, this is something that you're gonna go to, or something to remember, but you can't get there yet because there's this wall here and there's this area in front of you. But these leading lines are like, okay, this is where you're going. You're going to get there. You got to go through here first. The contrast draws your attention to be like, okay, I have to go here instead of the landmark. This is where I'm going. And then the breadcrumbs really lead you directly to there and really make sure you know you're going in the right direction. Another really good example of breadcrumbs are the coins in Mario that lead you to different jumps. Those are a perfect example of breadcrumbs being used to lead a player to complete a very specific action. And then here's another example of leading lines working with other parts of this compositional flow. So obviously this surrounding area is a lot darker, and all of these details here are very much leading inward, along with this big more constricting gates that lead to a larger area, going from a dark area to a lighter area, and a smaller area into a larger area. The contrast is very, very clear here. And yeah, that is the compositional flow principles. So in conclusion, leading lines are a traditional part of design. They're historically backed up in what people use in art, and they're often used in game design to really subtly and really direct the player without them really knowing, and a lot less hand-holdy types of design in terms of leading players. And they're only one part of a compositional design toolkit. There's a lot more to study about compositional design, and leading lines are just one part of that whole. And here are all of my sources. And thank you so much for watching.